Before we dive in, hit that like button, drop your theories in the comments, and subscribe if you want more cosmic stories where humanity punches far above its weight. Your support fuels the next chapter of this universe. Captain Rian Holt had grown accustomed to the quiet conversations of deep space, the subtle hum of his survey vessel threading through nebulae like a lone violinist wandering in empty amphitheater. The Terran Outreach Corps had sent him to map the veiled expanse, a stretch of uncharted black where sensors faltered and old civilizations whispered of vanished fleets. To him, mystery was oxygen. Danger was a familiar companion sitting just behind his shoulder. He was halfway through calibrating the spectral scanners when the first anomaly slithered across the display. Lines of static trembled, jittering like something alive beneath the screen. Rian frowned at the sight. The expanse had a reputation for distorting readings, but this pattern wasn't distortion. It felt intentional, almost rhythmic, pulsing in a cadence that seemed to circle him. The ship shuddered as 3 signatures burst from the void. Scavenger mercenaries, ships welded from stolen alloys, their engines coughing plasma like dying serpents. They swept in with predatory geometry boxing him in. A voice crackled through the comms, strained by a cheap translator. Terran vessel. Power down. Your cargo is our claim. Rian exhaled once, steady and focused. He had no cargo worth stealing, but mercenaries never cared about truth. They cared about what they imagined. He angled the ship toward an escape vector, calculating a microjump path, but the drives flickered sharply. The anomaly had crawled deeper into the systems. Something was watching. An explosion rippled across his starboard flank as the scavengers fired a warning shot. Stray sparks danced across the controls. Rian's jaw tightened, a quiet resistance rising through his chest. He sent a distress ping, knowing it would vanish into the blackout zone like a stone dropped into a bottomless sea. His sensors flared white. Not bright, total, absolute. An expanding sphere of lightless energy swallowed the battlefield. One moment the mercenary ships were roaring forward, the next they were missing from every register. No debris. No radiation trails. Not even the memory of their signatures. Space felt wiped clean, as if the universe had erased an error line in its own code. Rian's breath cooled. He checked the scanners, but the ship refused to acknowledge reality, every system dipping into a hush like prey bracing for a hunter's footfall. The anomaly pulsed again, not as static but as presence. Something moved along the hull with silent precision. The airlock lights dimmed. The temperature dropped by a fraction that only an experienced explorer would notice. He turned, and the external camera feed blossomed to life. Standing on the hull was a figure shaped like the universe's answer to fear. 6 limbs arranged in a poised symmetry, armor like fractured night, and eyes forged from compressed starlight. It wasn't breathing. It wasn't threatening. It was observing him through the camera lens with the patience of something that viewed time differently. The creature raised one clawed hand. A message appeared on his console, assembled from a language the ship shouldn't have known. 3 words, jagged at first, then resolving with eerie clarity. Human. Chosen. Protected. Rian felt his heart lean into his ribs. He'd heard stories around distant campfires. Tales of a being called Vorkal, the predator that silenced empires. Entire fleets disappeared when it hunted. Kingdoms abandoned planets overnight at the rumor of its arrival. Every civilization that mapped the outer sectors had a myth, a warning, a quiet scar in its collective memory. None of those stories included mercy. He steadied himself, both hands braced on the console. Why me? He whispered, not expecting a reply. The creature vanished from the hull camera. The ship groaned as the airlock cycled unprompted. Metal creaked like a reluctant door yielding to a storm. Rian reached for the emergency restraint harness, instinct bracing his posture. Then the airlock slid open. The being entered in absolute silence. Up close, its presence felt like standing beside a collapsed star. Gravity pressed against the air, folding it in subtle waves. Its eyes tracked him with relentless attention, yet held a flicker of something unexpected, like recognition. Rian Holt, the creature said, the voice scraping through the translator with a texture that felt older than languages. Targeted. Hunted. Its head angled, listening to wavelengths he couldn't perceive. You, anomaly of will. Rare. Chosen. I don't understand, Rian said. His voice steadied itself, the same way it did during starship malfunctions and close-range asteroid swarms. If I'm hunted, why appear now? The creature's limbs shifted, not in menace but in emphasis. Because you survive, it answered. Because others fear you will rise. Because this universe requires balance. The ship's lights flickered. In that moment, Rian realized something vital. The predator hadn't come to kill him. It had come to offer allegiance. Not to humanity. To him. He swallowed the shock, trying to assemble his thoughts into something coherent. If you're here to protect me, he began, what am I being protected from? The creature's eyes glowed brighter, reflecting a truth Rian wasn't ready for. Everyone, it said. Silence pooled between them, a fragile equilibrium neither moved to break. Rian sensed a threshold unfolding, something that would reshape his life in directions he could not yet chart. Outside the viewport, the veiled expanse stretched on, quietly waiting for the next decision. The predator inclined its head, the gesture deliberate and somehow respectful. Choose, it murmured. Accept protection. Or walk alone into the dark. Rian didn't answer yet. The moment demanded more than instinct. It demanded purpose. The creature waited without impatience, as if time itself deferred to his choice. And that is where the future pivoted. Rian accepted the presence of the predator with the same deliberate breath he used before crossing a fragile ice ridge during a polar expedition. Decision never came to him explosively, it arrived like a quiet change in atmospheric pressure. Vorkal, if that name truly belonged to the being before him, watched with the stillness of an ancient monument waiting to be acknowledged. Its 6 limbs rested in a posture that suggested readiness, not aggression. Then start by explaining why a creature that terrifies half the galaxy is standing in my ship, Rian said. His words carried more steadiness than he felt, threaded with the disciplined calm he'd built from a lifetime of confronting the unknown. Tell me what you think you know about me. Vorkal's eyes contracted and expanded in a pattern that might have been contemplation. Light folded gently across the armored plates that sheathed its form, revealing intricate veins of energy coursing beneath the surface. The ship's lights dimmed again as if accommodating its presence. When it finally spoke, its voice carried less distortion, shaped more precisely through the translator. You are human. Species young yet pattern unstable. Growth without limit. Unafraid to evolve. The creature's head angled as though inspecting some invisible frequency. Others see danger in your potential. I see resonance. Something rare. The words pressed into Rian with unexpected weight. Humanity's reputation across the stars remained fractured, a mix of admiration, suspicion, and grudging respect. They were explorers who became colonists who became innovators who became, occasionally, troublemakers. But resonance? That was a concept older than most known civilizations. Vorkal touched the console, not physically but through a shift in gravitational tension. A flicker of silver bled across the displays. Images manifested like memories dragged into daylight. Rian watched glimpses of colossal warships dissolving under impossible pressure. Battlefields where entire battalions vanished in the span of a heartbeat. Planets emptied not by malice but by inevitability. Each vision pulsed with the unmistakable signature of the being standing beside him. He understood then why entire civilizations feared speaking the predator's name. Vorkal withdrew from the console. I destroyed only those who tried to cage me. I hunted only tyrants, warmongers, conquerors. Empires used fear to shape the myth. The creature's voice thinned for a moment, laced with something that resembled fatigue. But solitude changes purpose. I saw your species climb from stone to starfire in a handful of breaths. Rian absorbed the images, his mind threading connections with his own experiences. Humanity's expansion had often been desperate, driven by creativity under pressure. Every leap forward had come from standing beside something that seemed impossible. You chose me because I represent my species, he said. Vorkal's gaze sharpened. I chose you because you refused panic. You faced death with clarity. You asked why instead of begging for survival. Few do. Rian allowed a thin smile. Curiosity tends to keep me alive. Curiosity bends destiny, Vorkal replied. Silence settled again, but it held warmth now, not threat. Rian stepped closer, drawn by instinct to understand the creature better. Up close he noticed that its armor was not metal but something closer to compressed organic matter woven with cosmic filaments. Each limb moved with impossible precision, a balance between raw power and refined control. All right, Rian said, weighing the risks and benefits. If you came to protect me, I need to understand what danger follows. Vorkal's posture tightened. The air thickened as though tension itself had physical form. Scavenger ships were not acting alone. They were contracted by factions that believe I submit to you. A faint echo of disdain rippled through its voice. They want to test that belief. Rian's brow furrowed. Why assume I have control over you? Vorkal's eyes dimmed in a gesture that felt like an ancient form of amusement. Because I spared you. To many that implies obedience. Rian exhaled slowly. They'll come for me. Not because of who I am, but because they think they can access you through me. Yes, Vorkal said. You are a point of leverage. A perceived weak link. Rian's jaw tightened. He was capable, but the political machinery of the galaxy rarely cared about individual competence. It cared about symbols, narratives, and opportunities to gain advantage. So what happens now? Rian asked. Vorkal answered not with words but by pointing toward the forward viewport. Beyond the reinforced glass, stars trembled with the arrival of new signatures. Sharp, disciplined, unmistakably coordinated. Rian recognized the formation style instantly. These were not scavengers. These were professional mercenaries flying vessels bearing the insignia of the Helix Fong Guild. Their reputation was straightforward. Efficient, ruthless, expensive. They track anomalies, Vorkal said. They scented me. They will not leave without confrontation. Rian moved to the controls, instinctively running through tactical options. His ship was fast but frail compared to the incoming fleet. Running was impossible. Fighting on his own would be suicidal. He glanced at Vorkal, aware of the unspoken reality. The creature could eliminate the threat effortlessly, yet its protection came with consequences he did not yet fully understand. The mercenary leader opened a channel. A sharp, confident voice filled the cabin. Terran explorer Rian Holt. This is Commander Jax Thorne. I'm giving you 2 minutes to surrender the entity inside your ship. Failure to comply will be interpreted as consent for engagement. Rian muted the channel and looked at Vorkal. If you protect me, we end up in a war neither of us wants. If I hand you over, they'll dissect you for the next 100 years. There's no good exit. Vorkal lowered its head until its eyes aligned directly with Rian's. There is one path. Cooperation. You and I move together. You guide choice. I provide strength. We survive. Rian hesitated only long enough to acknowledge the shift in his own fate. The universe had drawn him into a storm he could no longer step around. He nodded once. Then we face them, he said. Outside, the mercenary ships tightened formation, their engines igniting like a ring of coiled blades. Inside, Rian and Vorkal stood side by side, prepared not by trust alone but by necessity that had transformed into partnership. Commander Jax's countdown reached its final seconds. Rian braced himself as the line between hunter and hunted began to blur. Commander Jax Thorne ended his countdown with the crisp precision of a man accustomed to compliance. The mercenary formation flared alive as weapon capacitors charged in practiced harmony. Rian studied the movement of each vessel on his display, cataloging attack angles and blind spots even as his pulse threaded faster. He had survived worse but never with an apex predator beside him. Vorkal shifted slightly, an almost imperceptible adjustment that sent a ripple of gravitational pressure through the cabin. It wasn't a gesture of aggression. It was preparation, like a mountain bracing to redirect an avalanche. Your species negotiates before violence, Vorkal said. But they do not approach as negotiators. Rian opened the comm channel. Commander Thorne, I'm not holding this entity captive. It came of its own accord. Jax's voice bit back through the static-laced link. That's exactly the problem. If something like that chooses you, every faction within 5 sectors wants to know why. We can't let a human become the only person it listens to. I didn't ask for its allegiance. Intent doesn't matter. Influence does. The channel cut sharply, signaling that diplomacy had concluded. Vorkal turned its head, studying Rian with something that resembled curiosity filtered through alien logic. This commander sees you as destabilizing artifact. I've been called worse, Rian murmured, though the truth carried weight. Jax Thorne wasn't an amateur. The man commanded respect across the frontier. If he'd come personally, it meant the situation had escalated beyond typical mercenary jobs. The first barrage struck a moment later. Energy beams curved toward the ship, only to bend away at the last second, arcing harmlessly into the void. Vorkal had manipulated gravity without lifting a limb. Rian watched as the beams dissolved like mist in sunlight. Jax's voice snapped back through the comms. You're not controlling it, but it's defending you. That makes you a threat whether you intend to be one or not. Rian cut the link. If we don't end this fast, he'll call in reinforcements. Vorkal stepped toward the airlock. I handle external forces. You maintain the vessel. Don't kill them, Rian said quickly. They're following orders, not acting out of malice. The predator paused, its silhouette framed by the dim corridor lights. I will reduce fatality. Not eradicate threat. It was the closest thing to compromise Rian could hope for. Vorkal vanished from the cabin in a gravitational blink. The hull camera sputtered as reality distorted around the creature. One moment it stood on the ship's dorsal plating, the next it unfolded into a streak that leapt between the attacking vessels. The mercenaries panicked. Their formation broke apart as Vorkal tore through space with movements that defied standard physics. Each step formed a pulse of distorted gravity that disabled weapon systems, locked engines, or ripped targeting arrays out of alignment. Rian monitored the chaos, ensuring Vorkal wasn't forced into lethal measures. Commander Jax's flagship remained steady, holding position like a wolf refusing to abandon its dominance. It launched entanglement drones, nets of quantum filament designed to capture even the deadliest predators. For a heartbeat, the drones seemed to catch Vorkal, their tendrils binding around the creature. Then every filament disintegrated. The predator appeared at the flagship's bow, inches from its viewplate. The camera feed projected the scene to Rian, Vorkal raising one clawed hand in warning, not violence. The mercenary ship froze. Rian opened the channel again. Jax, stand down. You can't win this fight. Silence answered him, followed by a reluctant hiss as Jax's ship powered down its weapons. You think this ends here? Jax asked. You think I'm the only one hunting that thing? Rian glanced at Vorkal on the feed. You wanted proof it chose freely. You have it. Walk away. You don't understand, Holt. Vorkal isn't just a myth. Factions have been searching for it for decades. They'll tear your species apart if they believe you have influence over it. Jax leaned closer to the console on his side, his scarred face carrying the exhaustion of someone accustomed to fighting history rather than individuals. I came to capture it before others got involved. Now everything spirals. Rian felt the shift in tone. This wasn't an enemy speaking. This was a soldier warning. What happens now? Rian asked. Jax hesitated. Now the Galactic Council steps in. They won't tolerate a predator aligning with a newcomer species. They'll call it a threat to stability. They'll summon you for questioning. And if they don't like your answers, they'll force a containment order on both of you. Vorkal returned to the airlock and entered the cabin without sound. Rian muted the line. The Council will demand your surrender. They fear imbalance, Vorkal said. Their fear becomes violence. Rian studied the creature. We need to go to them before they send half the galaxy after us. You choose confrontation. I choose clarity, Rian answered. And I won't run. Vorkal's eyes glimmered, reflecting something like respect. Then I stand with you. The comm channel reopened without permission. Jax's voice carried a final warning. If you approach the Council unprepared, they'll bury you under protocol and paranoia. They don't want answers. They want control. Rian looked at the stars ahead, knowing the next step carved his fate deeper into the galactic stage. I've dealt with worse bureaucracies. That's the problem, Jax said. This one can erase planets. Rian ended the transmission. The mercenary ships retreated, each jumping out in defensive arcs, leaving the quiet of the veiled expanse behind. The path to the Council citadel lay open, terrifying in its inevitability. Vorkal folded its limbs in something resembling readiness. Time to enter den of rulers who fear everything they cannot predict. Rian set the course. The engines ignited with a low tremor, and the ship surged toward the political heart of the galaxy where judgment waited behind polished steel and hidden agendas. The citadel rose from the void like a colossal ring forged from starlight and political tension. Its lattice of orbiting segments shimmered with the glow of thousands of diplomatic conduits, each humming with the silent arguments of ancient civilizations. As Rian's ship approached, automated patrol crafts aligned into escort formation, their weapons politely concealed but obviously primed. Nothing entered the Council's domain without scrutiny. Vorkal stood near the viewport, its silhouette reflecting the citadel's radiance in fractured streaks. Rian sensed the predator's tension not in movement but in the subtle warping of gravity around it, as though the creature instinctively braced for betrayal. He shared that instinct. A clipped voice arrived through the comms. Terran vessel, you are ordered to maintain full transparency protocols. Any interference will be treated as hostile intent. The tone carried no hostility, only the rehearsed authority of a system built to manage large-scale fear. Rian complied, though the ship's diagnostics reported minor stress fractures from the proximity of Vorkal's energy signature. He suspected the Council already knew. They probably felt the creature's presence before his vessel even reached orbit. Docking clamps latched onto the ship with surgical precision. A group of guards waited inside the receiving bay, their armor marked with the Council's insignia and reinforced with layers of shielding designed for encounters with volatile species. Rian stepped out first, hands visible, posture calm. Vorkal followed, and several guards flinched instinctively despite strict discipline. A council liaison approached, a tall figure with crystalline skin that refracted light into faint prisms. Captain Rian Holt. You and the entity will be escorted to the tribunal chamber. Any deviation from the designated route will activate containment procedures. Rian offered a neutral nod. Understood. They walked through corridors shaped by centuries of compromise. Each section held architectural imprints of different species, smooth Terran metallic lines blending into the organic curvature of Karthic design, eventually tapering into angular crystalline surfaces. The tribunal chamber shimmered with a heavy sense of expectation. Rows of representatives filled the ascending balconies, each one observing with a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, or barely concealed fear. Holographic records of Vorkal's past destructions hovered silently beside them like ghosts kept for reference. Rian stood behind a boundary emitter, though Vorkal ignored its presence. The creature surveyed the chamber with deliberate calm, acknowledging no threat because none here could meaningfully threaten it. A counselor with silver tendrils spoke first. Captain Holt. You stand before this assembly to explain your association with a being classified as a universal-level predator. Our records indicate it has aligned itself with you. Provide justification. Rian held their gaze. Vorkal is not controlled by me. It's not controlled by anyone. It chose to protect me after intervening against mercenaries who attacked my ship. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, tension sparking like static. Another counselor leaned forward. Its choice is precisely the concern. Why a human? Why you? Ask it, Rian said, avoiding unnecessary theatrics. Vorkal stepped forward, gravity bending around it like a halo of pressure. The predator's voice filled the chamber, refined through the translator but still layered with ancient resonance. I chose him because his species grows in adversity. Because humanity carries potential to change the galaxy's trajectory. Because he faced me unflinching. Several counselors recoiled. A representative from a war-scarred federation rose sharply. You expect us to believe a creature capable of annihilating armadas has decided to mentor a human? This is manipulation. Vorkal's gaze cut toward the speaker. If I wished domination, I would not attend tribunal. I would act. The gravitational pressure intensified slightly, enough to silence the chamber. I seek equilibrium. Humanity disrupts that equilibrium through relentless evolution. I wish to guide, not overthrow. The tension sharpened into something volatile. Every representative weighed the implications of a predator aligning with a rising species known for stubborn progress. Rian saw the anxiety bloom behind carefully controlled expressions. The council feared humanity's ambition even before Vorkal complicated the equation. A new hologram flickered to life above the chamber, displaying classified reports. Rian felt his stomach tighten. The documents revealed covert council operations tracking Vorkal's energy signatures over the past decade, paired with contingency plans to capture or eliminate it. The council had been preparing for conflict long before he entered the expanse. A senior counselor leaned forward, voice low and cutting. Captain Holt. We have evidence that reveals your presence in the expanse was not random. Terran expansion into restricted territories violates agreements established for the protection of galactic stability. Rian kept his voice level. My mission was sanctioned. My orders were to map anomalies and identify potential hazards. I didn't know Vorkal was there. Convenient, the counselor replied. Vorkal shifted, the gravity field distorting as if responding to Rian's rising heart rate. You fear patterns you do not understand. The counselor pointed directly at the creature. And you represent a threat older than our coalitions. Rian sensed the tribunal evolving into something darker. Their questions shifted from inquiry to justification. They weren't evaluating facts, they were building a case for containment or eradication. Then came the moment that shifted the room. A smaller representative from the outer systems activated a hidden data feed. The screen revealed encrypted communications between several high-ranking counselors. Rian recognized the implication instantly. A coup was already in motion. They planned to seize Vorkal during this very session, claiming self-defense, and use Rian as collateral damage or justification. The chamber erupted. Accusations erupted like sparks across flint. Guards scrambled as conflicting commands surged through comms. The council fractured between those who still clung to the tribunal's legitimacy and those preparing to execute the illegal containment order. Vorkal's eyes narrowed. Betrayal. Rian stepped closer, lowering his voice. They'll strike in seconds. We need to move. Agreed. Security fields collapsed as competing override codes clashed. A squad of armored operatives rushed into the chamber, moving with lethal coordination. Rian recognized their intent instantly. They weren't here to ask questions. The first operative raised a suppression rifle. Vorkal placed itself between Rian and the advancing squad. I warned you, it said, voice steady. Fear drives destruction. The operatives advanced. Rian braced as the chamber plunged into chaos, realizing this confrontation marked only the beginning of a far more dangerous conflict. The chamber erupted into chaos before Rian could even register the first flash of kinetic energy. Operatives fired with ruthless precision, but Vorkal moved like a storm condensed into form, limbs snapping through the air, gravitational pulses distorting trajectories and crushing armor as if it were paper. Each movement was deliberate, each strike calculated to neutralize threat without unnecessary destruction, though destruction followed anyway. Rian ducked, rolled, and darted toward a console to override the containment fields, his hands flying over keys with a practiced rhythm born of decades of exploration and crisis. Vorkal's presence was constant, a shadow and shield, compressing space around it in a protective arc. The Predator's eyes followed Rian's every move, tracking, calculating, anticipating. When a suppression rifle fired from an upper balcony, Vorkal's limb shot upward, bending the bullet midair with a subtle warping of space, sending it harmlessly clattering against the chamber wall. Do not fear, it murmured, not for Rian's sake but almost as an affirmation of purpose. Rian's mind raced, bridging instinct with strategy. The Council's coup was comprehensive. The operatives moved with the authority of sanctioned enforcement. Yet there was a vulnerability they overlooked: human unpredictability, improvisation. He activated emergency protocols on the console, redirecting power from environmental controls to the chamber doors, forcing them to cycle erratically. Guards lost footing, staggered, collided, and Vorkal used the confusion to corral the intruders away from him. The Predator's limbs struck with the elegance of a predator, each blow a lesson in controlled force. A hulking council operative lunged, trying to trap Rian beneath a graph field net. Vorkal intercepted, its clawed limbs snapping the net in half, sending the soldier tumbling backward into a pile of debris. Rian seized the opportunity, sliding past the chaos toward a secure lift, and engaged the chamber's emergency escape sequence. The walls of the citadel trembled under the strain of gravitational manipulation and energy feedback. Suddenly, a familiar presence joined the fray. Jax Thorne, scarred and stoic, appeared from the shadows of the debris-strewn chamber. His weapons were active but aimed carefully, not indiscriminately. I told you I'd return, he said, voice clipped yet carrying grudging respect. Let's finish this. Rian didn't have time to respond. Together, they coordinated. Jax providing calculated covering fire, Vorkal neutralizing lethal threats with precision, and Rian hacking the Citadel's control network, opening emergency corridors and diverting automated defenses. The combination of human ingenuity, disciplined experience and cosmic power created an almost poetic synergy. The Council's elite operatives regrouped for a final offensive, bringing heavier arms and attempting to isolate Vorkal. Rian's mind raced through contingencies. He activated the Citadel's gravity modulators, creating unpredictable spatial distortions. Operatives fell, weapons jammed, and corridors warped in disorienting arcs. Vorkal adapted instantly, shifting its form to exploit the distortions, turning a chaotic battlefield into a channel of controlled destruction. As the last wave of operatives closed in, Rian glimpsed the central control array, the key to extracting them from the Citadel entirely. He sprinted toward it, his body a conduit of adrenaline and resolve. Vorkal's presence was a constant shield, redirecting energy blasts, lifting debris and maintaining a gravitational barrier around him. Jax flanked, covering blind spots, his tactical precision complementing the unpredictable flow of Vorkal's cosmic power. The final barrier required both human and predator cooperation. Rian initiated a sequence, his fingers flying over keys, while Vorkal's claws interfaced directly with the console, manipulating fields no human could influence alone. Energy surged through the Citadel, walls quivering as the escape conduit activated. Operatives screamed, thrown into containment fields as the hybrid force of man and predator commandeered the architecture itself. The chamber doors opened just as a collapse of structural integrity threatened to trap them. Rian sprinted, Vorkal close at his side, Jax covering the rear. They vaulted into the shuttle bay as alarms screamed and corridors buckled under the pressure of disrupted graph fields. Vorkal's final strike diverted a massive bulkhead just as it collapsed, saving Rian and Jax from being crushed beneath tons of reinforced material. The shuttle lifted off, engines igniting, blasting free from the citadel as the building trembled violently behind them. Rian exhaled for the first time in minutes, feeling the weight of exhaustion and adrenaline in tandem. Vorkal folded its limbs, observing the retreating citadel with unyielding gaze. Jax, leaning against the shuttle's wall, finally allowed himself a nod of respect. "Not bad," he said tersely. "I underestimated you, both." Rian glanced at Vorkal, its eyes reflecting starlight as if absorbing the energy of the entire cosmos. "You chose to fight for me," he said softly, still grappling with the scope of the bond forming between them. "Even when everything was against us." Vorkal inclined its head slightly. "I chose you because you carry potential. You survive, adapt, and persist. Others fear that persistence. I protect it." The human heart in Rian swelled with an unfamiliar clarity. He had faced countless dangers, seen civilizations collapse, and navigated the void alone, yet nothing compared to the certainty of being acknowledged, defended, and understood by a force beyond comprehension. Humanity had risen through ingenuity, courage, and determination, but alongside Vorkal, it was capable of far more. Through the viewport, the galaxy stretched infinitely, dark, radiant, and waiting. The Council's orders, the mercenary fleets, the political manipulations, none of it mattered here. Rian, Vorkal, and even Jax had carved a path through impossible odds. And yet, the universe remained uncharted, filled with challenges they had not yet imagined. Rian leaned back in his chair, fingers brushing the console. "Where to now?" he asked, half to himself, half to the predator beside him. "Where the unknown waits," Vorkal replied. Its voice was steady, timeless, yet infused with a rare warmth. "Together we carve new myths. The galaxy has only begun to see what humanity and predator can accomplish." Jax exhaled, shaking his head with reluctant awe. "I've fought a lot of impossible things in my life. I never thought I'd see one of them follow a human." Rian allowed a small grin. "Then it's time we show the galaxy what impossible looks like." The shuttle accelerated, slipping through the void. Stars stretched into streams of light, each one a witness to the forging of an alliance that defied logic and history. Behind them, the citadel shrank, its walls a testament to fear and control now rendered irrelevant by courage, cunning, and the unexpected loyalty of a creature that had silenced empires. The universe waited. And Rian Holt, human explorer, with Vorkal at his side, intended to walk unafraid into every corner it hid.